and welcome to this three-part Finextra at Sibos series. I'm Hannah Wallace, and in this episode we'll be focusing on regulation within financial services. I'll be asking our top speakers about how banks are adapting to the changing regulatory landscape, what services we're seeing develop as a result, and at what point the cost of compliance outweighs the value of innovation. We'll be getting a better understanding about who are the winners and losers and whether regulation will truly keep up with the pace set by the tech giants. Let's see what they have to say. How are you seeing banks evolve to the changing regulatory landscape we're seeing?
The whole regulatory environment is a little bit binary. Banks need to adopt it. If they don't, they're out of business, which of course means that it's constant development. Banks need to change. Banks need to see how they improving the technology, the people, and also what kind of clients they serve.
Banks are responding to growing compliance burdens by saying, how can we use technology to try and meet this compliance burden or need in a smarter and still more cost-effective way, because it's a massive cost burden.
For us working in emerging markets, it's particularly important that everyone in the chain follow international standards. New regulations make it hard for banks, but make it even harder for organizations operating in developing markets.
One example of a regulatory change, new development, are open banking-based solutions. So we, for example, launched our DB request to pay based on an open banking architecture, which is enabled by the PSD2 regulation and the new capabilities provided by that.
As a result of open banking, there is completely new payment types which are being discussed now, because now you can actually access bank accounts and be able to debit client accounts almost instantly. That means you can actually do what we are now calling request to pay. It's a completely new type of payment that we weren't even talking about 2 years ago.
Forcing the industry to change and open up their systems and serving customers, giving them more choice at better price.
At what point does the cost of compliance outweigh the value of innovation, if ever?
Well, the cost of compliance is absolutely sometimes hindering innovation. I think PSD2 is a perfect example, where the compliance of that is hampering open banking. So I think that is a very, very complex matter, right?
Many banks will say that 70% of their IT cost is compliance-led these days. And even if you say it's 40%, it's probably still too much.
The cost of compliance is definitely in a bank's P&L already quite a big burden. I think it already has outweighed some of the innovative ideas, because it's easier sometimes not to innovate, be content what there is already, because you don't necessarily know which direction the regulation will go in the future.
Innovation should allow financial services companies to operate more effectively. But there is a trade-off between cost and regulation and the intent. It's a big challenge for all organizations to find the balance between following the rules, obviously, helping clients understand the rules and help them to help themselves effectively.
As the need for compliance goes up, then people keep innovating with new ways to try and meet that need.
Cost of compliance will probably only really outweigh innovation if one loses the balance between pure compliance versus pure innovation. As long as we can actually put the client in the middle and really think about what the client needs are, and as we're trying to comply, figure out ways to really make the most of that regulation with ideas, then I think we're going to be fine.
I don't think the cost of compliance outweighs the value of innovation, but it clearly impacts the ability to innovate. So there are regulatory requirements, consuming capacity, and there are clearly as well some examples where the ease of use or the ease to develop solutions is impacted by regulatory demands.
People and the organizations that will win are those that understand how to get the best value from that reg tech. And those that are going to lose are the ones that think that they can build it all their own way, in-house solutions, and really focus on the wrong problem statement.
I think the winners will be banks and fintechs, which really manage to collaborate at the right level, ensure that there are industry solutions, but differentiate when it comes to the real value to the client and to the real client proposition.
I think the losers are going to be people who don't think about how to use new data sets, aren't able to deliver new offerings. Also people firms are not like responding to regulators in a timely way.
Organizations that don't adapt or that try to protect themselves or build ring fences, they'll fail or they'll decline in importance. Those organizations that are forward thinking, always trying to understand what's coming next, they'll do well.
Do you think regulation will be able to keep up with the pace set by the tech giants?
Regulation always follows the innovation of the market, the tech giants, and also the banking industry in general. I think banks acting as an extension arm for the regulators to help really figure out what is the best way to manage risks, what is the best way to build the banking services. If we look at this from the AML perspective, then certainly banks are extension arms to the regulators.
As long as we have the good practices around responsible finance embedded in the minds of tech giants, as much as in the financial services industry, I think we will be able to do that.
Our role has to be to help regulators as things develop. As long as we're working in collaboration, the answer is yes. But if we all go off and do our own thing, it makes it harder to drive positive outcomes for the real economy.
I think it is always a struggle for regulation to keep current with technologies. We've seen this in the crypto sector, in the blockchain sector, looking at how we integrate those technologies into our corporate landscapes. But at the same time, you look at how, whether it be PSD2, whether you look at the Basel II regulations, etc., these regulations take a long time to mature to a point that it drives real value and real protection for customers.
And I think there we need to very carefully look at the balance to ensure that the regulation which is coming is really fulfilling its target, protecting consumers, ensuring that we have a sound ecosystem, but not actually making everybody busy just to work on compliance and miss out on innovation compared to very innovative regions like Asia, where there's a lot of dynamics.
So there we have it. Those are the thoughts and ideas around regulation from this year's Sibos. We've heard our speakers talk about some of the challenges and opportunities around regulation in financial services and gained a better outlook for how this space is developing in the future. Thank you for joining FinextraTV, and we look forward to seeing you in Boston next year.